Hello, it's Bladeofsteel here, and today we're doing a update video on the announcement on the patch notes version 1.01.02. It's been a couple days now since the patch notes have been out, since they dropped the balance change, and yeah, a lot of things have changed. So we're going to go ahead and go through the balance changes, and I'm going to give my opinion on what I think and how I think they might be able to affect the format. So let's go. Greetings, Spellslingers. We are excited to bring you a patch full of awesomeness and goodies today. In addition to some bug fixes and changes to events, we also have the biggest round of balance changes ever. While we have overall been pleased by the meta, some green aggressive decks are overperforming. We want to take a bit of power away from these dominant green builds and redistribute that to other aggro decks. In addition, we wanted to improve the competitive balance among all Spellslingers to make sure they all have more of a fighting chance in the arena. As such, you will see a significant number of buffs to our lesser competitive slingers. Alright, so basically, Drist and Vivian have been too good, and they kind of wanted to hit some of them. And Fairy and Nahiri have seen like zero play. But yeah, they did some changes to that. Cards and gameplay changes. Angrith's Death Rider went from a 4-1 for 3 trample debut. If your opponent was dealt damage this turn, draw a card, to a 4-3. And that's pretty big, 4-3 from 4-1. Shipwrecker went from a 2-2, or he went to a 2-2 from a 1-2. So he's a 2-2 for 1 that if they block, they take 2. That's pretty good. Angrith struggles to maintain a board presence, and his low toughness signature creatures make him too vulnerable to sweepers like Pyroclasm, Infest, and even Flame Shot. Increasing the toughness of Death Raider puts it more in line with other 3-drops. Puts it more in line with other 3-drops. Shipwrecker has a hard time trading with creatures in combat, making it a tough include in decks, so we're giving it a second power. Angrith has consistently been underplayed, and we hope these changes will make him more popular. Angrith has definitely gotten a bit more popular. His drops are a little bit more aggressive, and starting a board sometimes with the 3-2 for 1 is very good. Next, Ashiok. Ashiok had Weave Nightmares changed. After you add a card to your hand that did not start in your deck or play one of those cards, attach Nightmare instead of to the top 10 cards. It's the top 15 cards now of your opponent's deck. They also changed Extract Fear from 1 mana to 2. Ashiok presents a unique play experience that many players enjoy, but Ashiok has been able to shore up their matchup against aggro better than we expected. We need to be careful with the power level of this slinger because it has such strong matchups as the game goes on. So we are weakening Ashiok's early game by slowing down the speed in which nightmares pop up. Now, the thing is, Extract Fear 1 mana to 2 basically means instant anticipate starting with your opponent's deck. I think that's a fair change, and it costing 1 was a little bit too good. So that's totally fair. Now, the Nightmares 10 to 15 isn't probably as significant as people think it is, because you'd have to waver in whether or not standard deviation would... There's a whole bunch of math stuff, basically. It's whether or not it's significant in terms of top 10 to top 15, and whether or not you're averaging how much heal you are. If you play a bit more defensive stuff, you might be able to get deep in your deck. So maybe it's just like you need to do a better build around, trying to play towards the early game, which honestly is a good thing. I think Ashiok still has a shot, and you kind of need it to be in the meta to deal with some stuff that's too slow. Fire Elemental for Chandra is going to 3-1 to 3-2. The Elemental's been a bit too easy to trade with in combat, and this change will allow the Elemental to trade positively with some 1-drops. Yeah, pretty much. That's a good change, though it still dies to shock, but it doesn't die to burn through, so that's good. Domri, you know I love Domri. Domri was my favorite thing. Unbridled Rage now adds a Warboard after debuted abilities resolve. So that means then it will be more consistent to actually trigger with Field Rusher, because the problem is you activate Field Rusher and it doesn't count the second creature towards the new board, and it should. So it theoretically should allow that to work that way. But they unfortunately nerfed Warboard from a 0 mana to a 1 mana. So now it's a 1 mana 3-2 that you get for your every 5th creature. Warboars have been able to apply more pressure than we like for aggro Domri decks. This will slow down the ability for Domri to go wide. They could have said go wild, but they didn't. We also adjusted the timing on his special to work better with other cards. I have to really test to see just with how the debuted effects are triggered and whether or not you actually get the extra creature counting towards the extra war boar. And as a person who consistently forgets to drop the boar for free the turn that I get it, I don't think I'm going to feel that much difference between 0 and 1, to be honest. If anything, it might actually inspire better play to be able to save the boars for later. And it might even make it so that Nodorog actually starts seeing play. Drist, he's losing the health. 26 health to 25. Drist has been in a better spot since our last update and is no longer dominating the ladder. But with the goal of balancing our aggro decks and weakening green, we'd like him to be a little bit easier to handle or race against. Yeah, they hit him 1 health. It's like the 5th or 6th nerf, and honestly, Drist is still really strong. Gideon players. Ardent supporters going from 1-1 to 2-1. The Ardent supporter has been hitting the gym, just like this hero gets. Now he's better able to give as good as he gets now he's better able to give as good as he gets in fights. So weird wording. Anyway, yeah, so Ardent supporter is getting 1 power. And the argument is that somehow it makes him worse in Paragon of Justice builds, but because he'd be a 1-1 after Paragon resolves. But the thing is, he'd be a 1-1 anyway, so it's not gonna really change anything in that deck. Nahiri is huge. Nahiri, they changed the buff of her ability. It's still pay 1, but it's give +2/+0 instead of +1/+0. That is insane. If you've been with us since our soft launch days, you'll know Nahiri has bounced back and forth between +1/+0 and +2/+0 Blade. Now the overpower of other slingers is higher than it used to be. We feel that it is safe to revert back to the stronger Blade she enjoyed during the soft launch period. With this buff, Nahiri should be able to prey on some of the slower decks in the format and provide aggro players with another option outside of Domri. I'm glad they recognize Domri as the aggro deck. But yeah, +2/+0 is insane. There's some other changes they did to other cards that I'll probably get to when we get to those cards. But you can go turn 1 on coin, Raging Goblin, swing for 4 on turn 1, and then now you're playing Chandra with an ability. That's pretty good. And then, you can hit with Ball Lightning, and now it's swinging for 8, so you're going to be basically Lava Axing for 4 some of the time. There's a lot of stuff that Nahiri is a lot better at doing now. And honestly, I think Nahiri might be tier 1, or at least tier 2 now, instead of bottom tier. Vivian's Arc Bow is going from 3 charges down to 2. Vivian can quickly end games when she hits evasive upgrades, making the game feel non-interactive. Lowering the charges here makes it harder to roll sneak and or flying in order to close out matches. I honestly think this change will do nothing. Most of the time, your game is going to be closed out by the time you do second charge anyway. But, I mean, it's a welcome nerf nonetheless. Magnum Opus, it's going from 4 mana down to 3. Don't think it helps Ral at all, really. They don't even play the card. We're very aggressive in making sure we solve the Ral problem. Now that it's in check, we believe we can give back some of the power we took away. Magnum Opus is ultimately a fair card, and we believe that Ral is at his most fun when interacting with the board, which this card pushes him to do. Yeah, pretty much nobody cares. Teferi is getting a huge change. Outwit, his main ability, after every 3rd trap you play, instead of draw 1 cards, is now draw 2 cards. So he's now crazy good at controlling. Even some the weaker traps are now strong. And more importantly, Teferi's staff, instead of drawing a trap from your deck, you now draft a trap of any color. So you look at 3 cards that are traps, and it can be any color, and you add 1 to your hand. So it lets you not take cards out of your deck, which will be good because you're going to be drawing more cards. And you can use the Sturm Mentor to give it up to 3 charges now too, which you could always do, but now you wouldn't be running out of traps because you're basically having 4 extra traps in your deck now with staff instead of losing traps from deck. Teferi has struggled to beat mid-range decks and also keep up with other control decks like Jason and Ashiok. Increasing the amount of card draw and outwit should accelerate his mid game and provide him with the card advantage to go toe to toe with slower decks. In addition, changing the staff to draft a trap reduces his sequencing issues of drawing it after exhausting all of the traps in your deck, and also gives Teferi more surprise to pull out. This should make Teferi more fun to play and harder to predict when playing against. And pretty much the latter is a lot of Teferi decks and a lot of Nahiri decks, so they definitely change it up there. They changed up the class cards, and honestly, I like all of these. Oath of the Paladins, Aura of Courage is costing 4 mana instead of 5. This is relevant because if you're running a Nahiri build, which I don't recommend, then you can run it with Monastery, and most of the time Monastery, since you have a 40% chance to draw extra card, you make everything cost 4 or less. So you could do that in Aura. Now, the thing that I think this changes mostly is for Kaya and Gideon, and it's just 1 less, but I mean, they'll take it. Takes courage to cast this for 5 mana, because many times you won't be able to play a creature to the board as well. Because you need a lot of creatures to make level 3 class card sing, we'd like to make it easier to cast. Path of the Barbarian got some big changes. First, Axe of Vengeance is going from 2 charges to 3, and Indomitable Strength is going from 6 mana to 4. Barbarian is probably the weakest level 1 of any of the classes. We want to put a bit more power into the axe, as well as giving it more of a chance to stick around for the next level 2 and 3 cards. In addition, similar to Aura of Courage, the non-board affecting nature of the level 3 card means it's often too pricey to cast when facing enemy board presence. Now, this is the card I think will definitely is basically the reason Nahiri is like going to be really good. Because of her ability, just straight up, any 3 power creature like Blitzing Minotaur is suddenly going to be able to go, I'm going to hit you for 5, and then do you block? And yeah, if you have the Axe of Vengeance, even a Raging Goblin is going to be like, I'm going to hit you for 5, and then do you block? So every haste creature now is representing an extra 5 damage a turn until they die. On top of that, you just have Tajik, who they changed him to, and now he can just trigger it himself. And I'm pretty sure Barbarian is the way to go now, and Nahiri is the deck. They did some changes to Wizards Familiar. It's going from a 2 mana discount to a 1 mana discount. That's significant. And Water Elemental is going from a 2 mana 5/5 to a 5 mana 5/4. That is change difference. The level 1 card allows players to cheat out powerful spells like Day of Judgment sooner than we'd like. That's pretty much what the Teferi people are complaining about. Providing a massive tempo advantage to control decks. We want to slow this down. In addition, bouncing the Water Elemental is currently an ineffective strategy since the mana cost is so cheap. People actually would bounce their own Water Elemental using Unsummon, honestly, and then replay it as a 2 mana 5/4 state. So, we'd like to open that counterplay and also make it easier to remove from the board by removing a health. So now it dies to Lightning Helix, the card no one's playing. Yeah, that's actually like the only 4 damage spell. Scour the Void is costing 1 more mana from 5 to 6. This card provides a lot of value in a lot of different decks, but is especially powerful in Ashiok. Moving the mana cost up makes Ashiok pay more for the massive amount of nightmares they generate. Honestly, I think that's fine, and I'd probably still play the 1 to 2 Scour the Voids in Ashiok and not really know the difference. Tajik is switching from a 4/5 that protects other friendly creatures to a 5/3, but now it protects itself as well. Tajik had an incredibly tricky bug to fix them, and he sometimes, but not always, protected himself. While working to fix the bug, we decided we'd actually like the effect to be more universal. We'll also make it easier for him to be killed in combat, so we get a fairer version of the card while also hopefully squashing any bugs related to the card once and for all. Honestly, a lot of the Driss players are saying they're going to drop Tajik. I could see that, but some of the decks, they're like only out as damage based, especially like red decks. So Tajik could basically just blank their removal against him. And if you just got like shields up, then he could just live and he can hit again. More importantly, having 5 power means he will trigger Path of the Barbarian by himself. So that's really good. Stormseeker's going from a 4/2 to a 4/3. 4/3 for 3 is pretty good. And we would like Stormseeker to be a viable weapon against slow decks as a safety valve. It was just a bit too far under the stats to be a reasonable include, so we're giving it an extra health. That seems good. I mean, It's basically a Tusker that deals damage for 1 more mana. I think that's actually fair. All of the Titans are going from 7 mana 8/8s to 6 mana 6/6s. So yeah, the Titans are good. 6 mana is probably the most you want to pay for threats. Prime time, you didn't really care about the stats. Being a mana cheaper means he could be thrown into like a Nissa deck. He'd probably definitely still be running it in Kyora. Same with Frost Titan. Grave Titan, I don't think still probably going to see play. It could be a Liliana thing. Inferno Titan is basically now a better Stadium Crasher. And, I mean, he didn't see play, but he didn't do it every turn, and he didn't have 6 toughness. So, Inferno Titan could be part of some kind of mid-range red deck. I think Sun Titan isn't really going to see much play in a way. Decks are generally skipping over the Titans for other finishers. In addition, there is a dearth of 5 and 6 mana creatures currently seeing play. Moving the Titans down the curve should allow mid-range decks to be more dangerous to control decks and go over the top of aggro a bit easier. These are exciting cards for new players to open or craft, and we want to live them up to their potential in game. They could have also made them 7/7s to keep up the extra power toughness for mana, but honestly, their effects are strong, so they might start seeing some play. Team Captain, now it buffs your entire board, including itself. So Team Captain has been pushed out by faster creatures that provide immediate value. So we wanted to raise the ceiling and have it provide more value over time to compensate. The interesting thing is, there's Knight of the Tusks. He's a 5/4 for 5 with armor. And the first time Team Captain swings, he's a 5/4 for 5 with armor and now with upside. So that's really good. We pretty much all saw it coming. Karazakar, the Eye Tyrant, is getting a nerf. 2 of them, in fact, actually. He's going from 2 power to 1 power, and Charm Ray no longer affects the cost of set traps. So basically, if you had a trap and it was set, you could disarm it, and now it costs 0. And then you could rearm it and use the rest of your mana, and your opponent won't know that you have a trap set because you have no open mana. And that leaves your opponent more likely to fall into traps. And that sucked. Especially the giant growth hits. Karakazar was just all around too good, so we are knocking off a power. This makes the power stealing ray more relevant and makes Karakazar less valuable when he gets into close combat. Karakazar's Charm Ray reduced the cost of a random card in your hand by 2 and raised the cost of a random card in your opponent's hand by 2, was causing a bug when it changed the cost of traps. Charm Ray will now ignore armed traps, but can still reduce non-armed traps. So they can't just have their giant growth up and then it get hit with the Charm Ray and then they disarm it. They'd have to have it not armed to get the discount. It now means, though, they can arm their traps and guarantee hits on other cards in their hand. They also changed a bug later down that I'm just going to get to here, is that they changed his other ray that power steals and makes it so that it does not affect creatures with 0 or less power. Because apparently it was not supposed to do that, so that is also technically a nerf as well. Caller of the Cursed is going from a 6 mana 4/4 to a 6 mana 6/4, which is really good for zombie decks. Roska zombies might be a thing again because they did another nerf to another Roska card that's coming down. Caller is a fun combo card, but it's hard to recur due to its low power. By increasing it from 4 to 6, decks trying to take advantage of recurring can now more reliably get it back from the graveyard. Not really sure what they mean by that. We don't really have any cards that care about power, but they might be doing something that cares about having higher power. Like they might have, like if you have 5 or more power on a creature to pull it back, might be spoiling something of Innistrad here. I don't know. In addition, it now has a board presence that's more aligned with an expensive cost. Definitely more power on a card you want to die anyway. That pushes damage is very much accepting. Sacred Sanctum is getting changed. It's not necessarily worse, but I think it's actually stronger. Before the game starts, now you heal yourself for 2. So basically start 2 extra health to help aggro decks if you're playing white. And then starting turn 5, you have a chance to heal yourself for 2 instead of healing yourself for 4. But instead of getting no mana gem, you get an empty mana gem. So it lets control decks continue to get mana, but you heal yourself for 2. Meaning that if triggered once, you're at the same place, because you healed for 2, then 2. versus healing 4. But if it's twice, then you'd be at 2 less health. But you still be up a mana gem. So I think it's definitely still very viable. Sacred Sanctum currently provides a massive amount of life as the game goes on, keeping decks without board presence afloat, reverting it to its previous version from the beta by making it heal 2 at the start of the game and 2 for each trigger. This makes it an interesting choice against aggro while also reducing the total healing. Never fear though, as though instead of getting no mana when the heal goes off, you now get an empty mana gem. This makes it an ideal land for control decks that are looking to hit 7 or 8 mana quickly. Well, we all knew it. Giant Growth, instead of being 3/3, now it gives +3/+2. So it's only a Oaken form with +1 power now as a trap. And honestly, that makes it a lot easier to trade with like the untested rookie. An important thing now is if they have Giant Growth up on a rookie, you block it with the Croson Tusker, and now you're actually trading the Tusker into their trap because you're hitting 4 and their toughness is 4. So that's actually a bigger change than it appears on the surface. Everyone knows what to expect when going up against a green deck with 2 open mana. It's Giant Growth. We want traps to be an effective card type, but the value of Giant Growth was outsized compared to its cost. Knocking off a health makes it a bit less likely for the creature to survive the fight, and Giant Growth less of an auto-include. Resilient Spear is going from 2 mana to 1. That makes it the first quote-unquote counter spell for 1 mana, but it only counters a legendary creature. Still, it seems very good. We've seen a proliferation of decks relying on powerful legendary creatures like Karakazar, Tajic, and even Strahd. Resilient Spear should be an appealing card for those who are looking to fight back against some of the most powerful creatures in the game, but its narrow window of use means it sees almost no play. If you're taking the step to put this card in your deck, we want it to be effective. Honestly, I think Ashiok might run it because you can use it against the Drift matchup, which is one of your worst matchups, and you can hit their legendaries for 1 mana. Teferi is the deck that it seems likely that people want it, but they have better traps, and they don't really care about the Drift matchup as much because they run Day of Judgments. Pixie Trickster is going from a 1/2 to a 3/1, which is actually really good, and it's now a staple 2 of Teferi. Making your opponent's creature into a frog can be pretty punishing, and you don't always have a small friendly creature to target. By buffing the stats on this card, we expect it to see more play in mid-range blue control decks, as its aggressive stats make it excellent for both dealing face damage and trading with opponent creatures, like the frog. So now you can frog their creature and then trade into it, meaning that it's like a show game in this case, and they get nothing, because if they swing this frog, you block with the Trickster, and then you basically show game, and they got nothing to show. So, I mean, you probably want both in decks that would run one or the other, but the Trickster is definitely a lot better. Also, 3/1 Flyer is really strong. Icing Death is going from a 5/6 to a 6/8, so he's more in line with its actual cost. I don't think it's really going to see much play anyway right now, because it's not really a deck that wants a third Day of Judgment kind of thing. Icing Death doesn't have the stats to stand toe-to-toe with some of the other expensive creatures in the game. With an ability that can be so situational, we wanted to make sure that was enough power in the card elsewhere for when you don't get full value from it. I kind of want to see if it'll work in Teferi, but it'd probably be like a replacement for a Day of Judgment just to see if it can do the same job, and you want to put the 6/8 Flyer. Sadistic Mind Flayer is going from a 2/3 to a 4/4, so you may actually want to play it because it's getting +2/+1. And it gives a creature +4/+4, so it can definitely be good at pushing damage. Could be like a new Angrith tool that you could use, putting it on Tramplers. We were conservative on the rate of this card since it can pack a powerful punch, but the body is too weak to make it into decks, especially with other sacrifice cards in its cost range. I had an Ashiok deck where you used the Flare along with Accolade of Shadow, and the Accolade would go back to your hand after it deals damage, so you get no drawback, and you hit them for 7. So being able to sit here as a 4/4 after you do that seems really strong. I have to rebuild or reconsider that deck. Sinister Southpaw is going to cost 1 more mana. Yep, this is that change. Speaking of sacrificing creatures, the Southpaw has been a powerful tool to stay ahead on board. We want to make it easier to come back from behind when facing slower decks, and moving this up the curve makes a larger window for mid-range creatures to be effective when going against Southpaw. So Southpaw might actually potentially drop from Vraska now. If people weren't running Flagrant Foul, I recommend Flagrant Foul personally. But Southpaw 6 mana versus 5 is huge. It actually means you might be looking into possibly Grave Titan at that point. But yeah, Southpaw is probably 1 mana is a huge nerf in this regard. Old Gnawbone is getting a health. I don't think we're really going to see much more play unless there's some deck that really, really wants the mana. But you never know. I would rather also get Empower. Wizard you can't teach an old dragon new tricks. Gnawbones has seen less play than expected, so we're increasing our survivability in an attempt to make it a more attractive card for decks looking for explosive plays. Now for the bad. Game system changes. They basically screwed up ladder. They made it so that they put in ladder, everyone's elos like the same. So everyone's min-maxing on wins right now. Previously, you would get 28 for a win and lose 31 on a loss. But let's see what they said first, and then basically, yeah. We've adjusted the formula for gaining and losing trophies on the ladder. Previously, the minimum was 20 and the max was 40. With 30 being the baseline, you would gain and lose if playing someone with a similar trophy total. Now the minimum is 10 and the maximum is 50. That's what's happening to everyone. Everyone's basically getting 10 on a win and losing 50 on a loss. Meaning, if you're not at 80% win rate, you're losing trophies. And that's pretty much everyone at Mythic tier is they're stuck in this rut of plus 10, minus 50. So I've actually not been grinding ladder, and I've been going up. So I'm not going to play until reset happens, at least in ranked. In addition, we've increased the sensitivity of the system, so players with a small difference in trophies should still see a difference in trophies won and lost. This is true. You were pretty much there. Sometimes you got 0. People were very close in ranking. This means you should see a wider array of numbers when playing matches, and winning is more important than ever. Unfortunately, we're only seeing plus 10 and minus 50, so that should theoretically balance out at the end of reset. Hopefully it does, because we're going to be grinding from Diamond to Mythic. We're adjusting the structure of many of our events to be easier to complete. Events with special rules should be a fast and fun break from the ladder, but instead grindy based on the number of wins required to complete them all. In addition, once you choose your deck, you were locked into a run and couldn't switch it if it was poorly positioned for the event. In order to make the experience more enjoyable, we're adjusting the max wins, losses from 4 to 2 to 1-1. Win or lose, you can then adjust your deck and go back into the following events. I haven't actually tried any new events. I'm guessing that means that you can just hop back in and you just pay the fee again. So let's check that out. It might be a decent farm rate. Double Trouble, Mana's Hug, Floor is Lava, Doppelganger, Spellslingers, Bottom Blast, Fully Equipped, Gideon's Day Out, Scrapyard, Scramble, Reuse, and Recycle. The entrance fee will now be 500 gold. Winning the event will award 800 gold. So previously, you had to get as many as 4 wins, but you could get as much as 1,600 gold, which means they basically reduced the overall rewards, but they decreased the amount of wins in order to be able to take it. So that means if you lose twice, you're out the fee. So that sucks if you're bad, basically. We're adjusting the ban Spellslingers for the following events. Domri is now banned in Gideon's Day Out. Yeah, because Domri is absurdly broken in Gideon's Day Out. Ashiok's now banned in BattleBots. That's fair, because Ashiok would just get all the nightmares and people would just lose. And it was a very unfun thing to do. They did several bug fixes. All of them were good. Fixed several bugs where translations are missing or incorrect in multiple languages. That's good for any international users. Fixed a bug where, I'm going to butcher this, Laven, Lord of the Unseen, prompts an error message instead of returning to the arena with Relentless. Yeah, I've tried that, and it didn't work, and I was trying to test to see if he gets the Endlessly Relentless from Tarask, and he does not. Spoiler alert. Fix a bug where stealing an enemy wild-shaped Brontosaurus makes the opponent immune to damage. Yeah, that was a pretty annoying bug. That was pretty bad. Fix the bug where Matron Malice sometimes returns to the arena when she shouldn't. Basically, in Drist, it was counting the Guinevere as death, even when they didn't block it. So when it left the battlefield, and a lot of the time she was coming back when only 3 creatures died, and she clearly states she needs 4 creatures to die. So Matron's going to be seeing a lot less coming back to the battlefield at random times in Drist, which many people consider to be a nerf. Fix a bug where plot creates 2 mana gems but only costs Nissa's Thrive ability to heal the player for 1. So basically, now when they do plot, they're going to heal 2, which is it's an extra health, so it's good. Fix a bug where Karakazar, the Eye Tyrant's Enervation Ray can steal power from creatures with 0 power. Yeah, instead of going to -1, they just still hit 0. So unfortunately, Karakazar is getting nerfed in that regard. Fix a bug where Karakazar, the Eye Tyrant's Charm Ray, can make set traps unusable. Yeah, that was also a bad thing. He could make it so that the traps cost 0, and you couldn't disarm them, but the trap would actually still activate and cost 0 and give you the mana back, essentially. And now they can't do that. Fix a bug where Recycle Grotesque can be played after sacrificing your last creature with Vraska's Throne. This is actually technically, yeah, it wasn't supposed to be done, but it would be considered a nerf for Vraska because a lot of the time you would go turn 1, Throne, 2, Merchant, turn 3, sack the Merchant to Throne. Oh, I can actually play a Recycle Grotesque. I'm going to do that. And you got a 6/6 for 3 after drawing 2 cards and getting Adapt Rattle at no drawback. And that was very strong. So it could be considered a nerf in this regard. We fixed a bug where Borgod's Skull, creating by using Vraska's Throne to sacrifice Ilharg the Raise Boar, can't be used the turn it's summoned. Yep, that was pretty annoying because you couldn't get the +2/+0 trample immediately on a creature for defensive purposes, and now you can, though it's really a very corner case kind of instance where you had to discover the Ilharg off of the throne. Fixed a bug where sometimes ongoing abilities of a stolen Sparkling Unicorn still affect the original controller. I didn't really know about that. I don't think anyone played the Unicorn, but okay, I guess nerf to Unicorn. Fix a bug where the player has no creatures. Mindless Rage deals damage based on the opponent's strongest creature. Good thing they fixed that. Barbarian's really strong now, and that would have been funny. Fix a bug where Mystic Weapons do not count as upgrades. This is basically a buff for Vivian in the case of Beastbonder. Now Beastbonder is going to get the +1/+0 when you use Stoneforge Mythic's ability to add a Mystic Weapon. Well, that is the end of the article. That is all she wrote. Looking forward to being able to grind some Mythic games, hopefully after rank reset when they fix this elo-based scoring. And definitely excited about Innistrad when it drops as the new set. I'm going to have about 100 packs, and I'll have to go to Lotus's to straight up craft Soren all of his signature cards day 1 as golden. Well, thank you for watching, and if you like this video, you may like this video, and if you like this content and would like to see more, please feel free to subscribe. Thank you and have a great day.